Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the P1 podcast with Matt and Tommy. We are back. It is the first race of the season, and I'm trying to be energetic and happy that we have had Formula One racing back on our screens. And I am. I'm glad that we had a race. Not so glad that Charles Leclerc didn't finish the race, but we will talk about that in a bit more detail later on. But Bahrain, look, expectations were incredibly, I guess, low, and then Alonso peaked them, and then it went back down again after qualifying, and the race was a sizzler. I guess you can probably say, Tom Bellingham, co-founder.
Yeah, it was a weird one. We were watching it on our watch along. Might be on Tommy on Twitch. I did that for
you. There you go. You're learning. I like it.
And it was not the greatest race to say the least. And then we almost had like 20 laps of madness and chaos where all the action was condensed into 15, 20 laps, and then that was it. So not the worst race of all time, but maybe not the banger we were hoping for to start the season, but there's still 22 to go.
Now, before we get into any more, we do our usual thing, which is giving or sharing a 5-star review that some of you lovely people drop on our podcast apps. And this 5-star review comes in from Fiber, but like FYB3R, from the Netherlands. And they say, 2 fans with the time to know more than most, without the tainted opinions of insiders, focused on banter and enjoying the sport more than anything else. Great fun to listen to. Well, thank you very much, Fiber. Much appreciated. I'm not sure we know a huge amount more. I see a lot of people say we have no wheel knowledge, but that's fine. I'm glad that you enjoy listening to us, and we like being in your ears as much as we possibly can. Now, the structure of this post-race podcast is that we both choose a memorable moment. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be good or bad, but it's memorable all the same. And that probably gives you a hint as to what I will be going into. But Tommy, we'll start with you.
Let's start with some positivity, I guess. Well, unless you're a Mercedes fan, but it is Alonso's overtake on Hamilton. And generally just seeing those two going wheel to wheel again. I said again during the watch along that what we need to save this race is Alonso and Hamilton going wheel to wheel. And it was good. It was very good, actually. That huge swapper. Yeah, it was. The huge swapper on that Alonso got in turn 4, and I thought they were going to collide, was absolutely insane. But then the move, oh my days, that move was absolutely sensational. And, we don't tend to see these days that a lot of passes out of DRS zones. It's quite rare nowadays because, you can just pass in a DRS zone. I think we said when we were like, not there, you don't pass there, especially in these new Formula One cars that are the size of a boat. And he managed to make it stick, and it was just epic seeing those two incredible legends of F1 going wheel to wheel again.
You don't necessarily see a huge pace differential when it comes to the traction out of corners, but that's really where we saw Hamilton struggling, which allowed Alonso to get a decent run and then overtake into the double left-hander downhill absolute chaos turn where you don't see overtakes there. Like, that was such an awesome move, and I just know Fernando Alonso in his cockpit pulling off a move like that on Sir Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah,
it would have just tasted that ever bit sweeter for him. Of course, those two, they're not the best of friends. They've had jabs at each other over the years. In 2007, they had an incredibly bitter, I would say, teammate rivalry. Yep. But yeah, Fernando clearly utilizing his extra grip, his extra speed, and also kind of embarrassing the Mercedes in some ways, it has to be said. And really, I could not believe it. I was absolutely stoked to see it. Fernando then obviously went on his way to getting a podium, and Hamilton unfortunately just didn't have anything else left in the locker.
He didn't. And yeah, you mentioned about him kind of embarrassing Mercedes. He obviously got yeeted at turn 4 by Lance on the first lap, which was crazy, and then
narrowly
yeeted,
like a small yeet.
Yeah, thankfully it wasn't. We all thought it was going to be a puncture when he started dropping back, but he dropped behind the Mercedes, and you thought, oh, this is a big anticlimax that Alonso is probably going to finish 7th there. But he carved his way through the field and through the Mercs, and obviously ended up getting past Sainz as well. It was to get that podium. I mean, I can't believe it. I've said it so many times, but just a few weeks ago, we were here wondering, could Aston Martin turn it around? Could they even get 4th in the constructors' title? Probably not. And Alonso's got a podium. I just think if he'd have had where could he? I know it's only the Red Bulls ahead of him, but I think he was on for comfortably 3rd if he'd just had a normal race and maybe higher up in qualifying. So they're looking very, very good. The hype is real.
It certainly is. And, if you go back to last year, we had one midfield podium. And that was Lando Norris. And we've already had a technical midfield podium from Fernando Alonso in the first round of the season. So I think it really is, disturbing. You can't even call it the top 4 anymore. Like McLaren and Alpine are absolutely not a top 4 team at the moment. And Aston Martin have gone flying through the doors and said, you know what, let's be the second fastest team.
Can you remember where Aston Martin qualified last year?
For the
Bahrain Grand Prix?
Both of them?
Yeah, 17th and 19th. That's a big old improvement.
There's still 20% of me that says Lawrence Stroll, has spent $3 billion.
That was your theory.
Yeah. Let's wait and see what the cost cap says at the end of the year.
Yeah, let's wait and see.
Right, a question from Tommy_Brewer. Do you think Alonso will win a race this season? I think it can happen if the Red Bull has an off day. Absolutely. 100%. This is Formula One. They're not going to be bulletproof reliable the entire year, unless your Mercedes, I guess, last year were very close to that. But Alonso has a good enough car that if you have an off day for Red Bull, if you have changeable conditions, anything that opens the door, even slightly, I think Fernando Alonso will be that driver that goes straight through it. So if the pace differential stays the same and Aston Martin very much are the second fastest car, then they can have a chance, I would say. I don't think it's necessarily, in the next few races, because Red Bull look clear at the moment. So let's see if it changes. Bahrain is quite a unique track, I suppose, and where it's hosted and whatnot. But Red Bull genuinely do seem to have quite a big buffer. So you'd need both Perez and Verstappen to have a stinker, which makes it less likely.
Yeah, we've never seen a perfect season in Formula One. This could age incredibly badly, and we banter that it could be a 23-0 Verstappen season, but realistically, there will be those races and where something goes wrong for a Red Bull. Maybe even both sometimes happened every year. Like I say, no team, even when Mercedes were dominating, they never had a perfect season. And like I say, Fernando Alonso, particularly in that Aston Martin, seems like the second best car right now, because he flew through past the Mercedes and the Ferraris. And oh my God, if that happens, I just can't believe we're here thinking that we could genuinely win a race this year. It is incredible, and I'm here for it.
You're buzzing.
I am.
Of course, a lot of people know you as a Max Verstappen fan. You got your cape on the wall. You've got the onesie from last year signed by the man himself. But you will take a Fernando Alonso victory.
It was my first love, yeah.
Every single day of the week. You even said on the live stream, Matt P1 Tommy, that you would happily have both Red Bulls DNF from P1 and 2 for Fernando to take the win.
Yeah, sorry everyone, but at the end of the day, it would have been an incredible story for Alonso to win, and it will be an incredible story if he does win, because it has been 3,500 and something days, not that I'm counting, and please happen, please.
Okay, so Tommy's going to be unbearable this year trying to get an Alonso victory. I'm going to be unbearable because Ferrari are not where I want them to be. Next question for Joe Zaragon. Should Mercedes be concerned that a customer team is stronger with a design base based on a rival and clear front runner? Now, this is, of course, referring to the fact Mercedes have their own unique concept. They're still at the moment running with it, but it seems as though that's going to get binned off very soon. They have got an alternative design ready-ish, but of course, with the cost cap, if they go another direction, they have to commit to it. They can't be, tossing it in and out and, or maybe this, maybe that. They can't afford to do that. But yes, I absolutely wholeheartedly agree that Mercedes should be incredibly concerned that Aston Martin have their engine in the back of their car and they pulled the moves on them today.
Yeah.
And it looks as though Mercedes, because realistically, the regulations haven't changed a huge amount. So teams have taken a step forward with this other concept. Mercedes haven't really. And the thinking is obviously that they believe this unique philosophy has got the potential within it, but they haven't been able to unlock it. And they can't go another whole season trying to find out what's wrong with the car because no other team have gone with their concept. And that's not how Formula One works. There is usually one way and that's it. You've got to design around that.
Yeah, that's the problem. They don't seem to, they don't believe it anymore because they're already talking about binning it off already, which is absolutely insane. I mean, 50 seconds behind the winner, Hamilton was. And you got to say that a fully fit Lance Stroll, who was only 4 seconds off Hamilton and beat Russell, is probably beating them. So you're going to have both Aston Martins ahead of the Mercedes. They generally just look quicker. And it is insane for them that, very embarrassing actually when you think about it, that one, they've got a Mercedes in the back, and two, they're essentially copying Mercedes' biggest rivals in Red Bull, which looks even more embarrassing for Mercedes' design team because it's basically Aston Martin going, yeah, we'll have your engine, but we don't want to copy your car. We want to copy the Red Bull because that's the best car. And clearly this design that the Mercedes have gone with is not working. And it's already, you're just like, well, they're 50 seconds off the lead and they're going to change their philosophy during the season. It's not game over, but it's very, very concerning for them in one race, which is mad to think.
Yeah, and it's obviously Aston Martin's one problem, but the gap to Red Bull is another. They're not looking to just beat Aston Martin. They're looking to fight for wins, fight for championships like they were right at the end of last year. But they've gone backwards. Other teams have moved forwards. And I wouldn't be surprised as soon as they possibly can change this concept, they will. Because that's the way that they have to go, in my opinion. Otherwise, it's probably a little bit of being stubborn if they just continue on this philosophy. Like, no, we know best, when all the other 9 teams have gone, I don't think so on this one. Sorry, Chief.
Yeah, and they were bigging themselves up, weren't they, on Twitter, putting these memes out like the W14 and the rest of the grid aren't ready for this. And then first race of the season, 50 seconds
ready.
off.
Yeah, they were ready for this, weren't they?
They were ready.
Quite easily,
ouch.
Actually. Speaking of ouch, let's move to my most memorable moment. We'll have a bit of alliteration here at P1. And mine, of course, it is in my brain, scarred. I can see it right now. Charles Leclerc, DNFing. More pain. Why? What has Charles Leclerc done to the Formula One gods for him to have this in the first race of the season? Now, of course, we might be saying, hey, don't worry. The curse is to win the first round of the season because no one wins the championship winning the first race. It's not happened since 2016, is it, or something? So it's been a while. So realistically, this might be a win for Ferrari. No points on the board. It's exactly what Verstappen managed last year, and just look how they ended up. Now, I'm obviously joking. The realistic outlook here is diabolical. The Ferrari race pace was not great. Charles Leclerc was stronger than Sainz in the race. He was about 10 seconds clear of him and looking quite comfortable. But they weren't far ahead of the Mercedes and the Aston Martins, at least in the hands of Carlos Sainz. And they couldn't push. Sainz even said over the radio, if I push any more, I won't be able to go to the end of the race, trying to defend from Alonso. So it just seems like the tyre deg problems, again, with Ferrari is just a recurring theme and one with which, if they haven't figured it out over the winter, they're not going to figure it out anytime soon. And it just seems to be something that really holds them back in the races. They weren't far off in qualifying, not too bad. But then you're finishing over half a minute behind the Red Bulls in the race. It's just not good enough.
Yeah, it really is not good enough.
Or not finishing at all.
Well, not yeah, exactly. I can't believe it. It was shocking. I mean, you just couldn't write it. Charles Leclerc having more mechanical issues. It just felt, and I'm sure it was exactly the same for you, Matt. Like it felt like we were there back in last year. It felt exactly the same. That pain of Leclerc having a problem, and it wasn't even the only problem. He had a battery, something to the battery, was it replaced that you can only
store was replaced, and there's only 2 of them you can get for the whole season.
So one of them's already gone. Obviously, you had pieces flying
they weren't
off.
happy with it, so maybe they just took it off, and then because obviously they can't.
Why is it always Ferrari? The first lap in Q1, his car was falling apart. Then you had the whole, why didn't he do his run later in the session? Oh, goodness me. It's almost like Binotto wasn't the problem, but it's only one race. We shall see if they can improve throughout the year and see what Vasseur can do, because maybe we get the opposite to last year where Ferrari are the ones improving, but they just don't seem like that sort of team. And I would love them to prove me wrong, because we want an exciting season. But when Ferrari are on the back foot, you don't feel like Ferrari are going to be the team that are going to push. That's Red Bull's game, right? That when they're behind. So kind of goes into the next question, actually, about how they're looking.
Oh, segue Bellingham over here. Your birthday as well. Happy birthday, Tommy. I know I've said it already, but for those listening, they may not have heard. But if you've been on the Twitch, you'll absolutely know. We sung
dedication
happy birthday
to P1 for my birthday. I've been since about 2:00. It's now 7:30. Still talking about Formula One.
So hard.
It's a good
Slaving
job.
Away.
Max Verstappen and Fernando Alonso are on the podium, so I'm absolutely fine with it.
All off. I don't know if there's actually a race on my birthday. I'll have to check. Right, question. Rohit Andley. Are Ferrari going to the midfield and finishing 4th? Since they haven't solved the reliability issue from last year, eventually Merc will outdevelop them like last year. Your thoughts? Well, this kind of goes into what you were saying, Tommy. We don't ever really fully trust in the process of Ferrari and development. It doesn't seem as though they're the team that can realistically go on the attack, even though, on paper, Red Bull shouldn't be able to develop as much with their wind tunnel restrictions, and obviously winning the championship as well means they get less time. I think Aston Martin absolutely could outdevelop Ferrari, just purely because they have a lot more time to play with. That the lower you finish in the constructors, the more time you get. So last year, Aston Martin, where did they finish?
Oh, way down.
6th, 7th?
Was that the master plan?
So maybe they knew exactly what's going on, and now they're going for the championship this year.
Sorry, Vettel.
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if Aston really do become a second, third fastest team throughout most of the season. They've got the resource, they've got the factory all built and brand new and spanking and all that good stuff, and they've got Fernando Alonso at the wheel. That's all you need.
Yeah, exactly. You've got one of the best drivers getting everything out the car, and last year Ferrari were that team that had the quickest car for the start of the season. It may not have been the best on race pace and stuff, but I'd say it's hard to argue that they didn't have the quickest car straight out the blocks for the season. And nightmare stuff for Ferrari to be that far down already. Yeah, Aston Martin finished 7th in the constructors title, so they've got plenty of wind tunnel time to play with those new rules. And yeah, if they're in the mix as well, you feel like Aston Martin could outdevelop them. And we saw what happened with Mercedes last year when Ferrari just threw away points and they got beaten by Mercedes, even though the Mercedes wasn't very good. So yeah, 4th, I wouldn't put it out the question for Ferrari, which is not good at all.
Nope, it's not good. Very painful indeed, because I do think Mercedes will outdevelop them, especially if they commit to the other concept and it works quite well. I can easily see Mercedes slotting into that gap in the between first and second that we saw first and second team, that we saw today. So, yeah, we will have to wait and see, but I don't see any bright future for Ferrari. But look, maybe that is the anti-jinx that's required. Who knows? Next question. Paisley 008 F1. When you strip it all back, broken wrist and toe, surgery 12 days ago, missed testing, couldn't turn the car properly, took his hands off the wheel on the straights, to come back and split the Mercs and finish P6, is Lance Stroll's result the best of the weekend? Now, I was quite critical of Lance Stroll at the beginning of the race on Twitter. I said that he's clearly not ready. And I still fully believe that when he was in wheel-to-wheel combat, he struggled and he had to take his hand off the wheel and all kinds of stuff that sort of made it a little bit sketchy. On the flip side, he had an incredible race if we actually break it down as to the amount of time he's had in the car, the injury that he was carrying. It was a brilliant result, and it just shows how good that Aston Martin is. With Lance Stroll up in P6 as well, but that's not to take anything away from his performance. It was a really decent job, and again, showing why he's not as good in qualifying, but really good in the race. That's why he always used to pop up in P9, P10 last year, just out of nowhere. Now he's a bit further forward. We get to see his races with a bit more focus. We can actually see how they sort of develop and unfold. So I would say Lance Stroll's result is probably up there with best of the weekend. I haven't decided if it's the best, but it's certainly up there with Alonso's podium.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd have said at the start of the weekend, we didn't even know he was going to be in the car still. It was very late, actually. When did they announce it? Was it Wednesday or Thursday, something like that? We didn't know. They were very secretive about it. So he'd have absolutely taken P6 and could have finished higher because he, like we said earlier, he wasn't that far off Hamilton. And him fully fit, you've got to think, yeah, he'd probably have been P4 as well. So it was a great performance in the end. I was very concerned after the first lap that why is he racing? There's no way he's finishing this race if he's almost unable to maneuver the first few turns without going into the side of his teammate, which I know Alonso cut on the inside, but it was just needed a bit more awareness and take it a bit more chill. But I think the problem was he couldn't, when he had a bit of a snapback, he couldn't, fight the wheel because of his injuries. So yeah, it was a great performance from Stroll, and I guess at the end of the day, the risk, you could argue, paid off because they've bagged great constructors points, and P3 and P6 with their drivers that are going to be there for the season in the car. It's looking very, very good indeed for Aston Martin. And yeah, fair play to Lance Stroll. And what I will say as well is it was quite amusing because part of it was genuine, I think, but part of it was also he knows who pays the bills. But Fernando Alonso was absolutely gassing him up, wasn't he, for the whole for the whole race? Because at the start he was like, I can't believe who was that hit me. And then at the end of the race, he's like, Stroll, genius, what a drive.
The fact he's in the car, this, that, and the other,
Yeah.
You can tell that Fernando Alonso is paid by his father. You can absolutely see that. I wouldn't even be surprised if in his contract, in the terms, it says
absolutely
3 compliments a weekend for Lance Stroll.
That was literally what I was about to say. I was like, he ticks off a bonus. He's like, Lawrence, did you hear that interview? That's another 20K. Thank you. Probably more
literally.
than that.
Yeah, probably a lot more than that. And also, as well, it clearly was the right decision in the end because I don't feel like Drugovich would have got P6. I feel like he might have even struggled to get into the points.
Yeah, that's a fair comment. Maybe lower end of the points for Drugovich, but it's impossible to know because we'll never know.
Yeah, we were only judging this off testing where he was a little bit further off, but of course it's just testing, so we can't really take much about the times. That was just an estimation from me. I don't think he would have done better than Lance Stroll did in P6. So. Next question. Generic nickname. Do you think the abysmal performance by McLaren was a one-off, or was it a sign for things to come this season? McLaren fans, let's try that again. Close your ears. I'm not sure it's going to be a great season for McLaren. I feel as though I mean, look, like this time last year, exactly the same situation, but they had problems with both of their cars. Lots of pitting. Obviously, Piastri was out of the race. Norris, as much as he tried, couldn't obviously keep the car anywhere near the points, just purely because he was in the pits every other lap doing something or other. I still feel as though Lando Norris will make the most of the car. He'll be finishing in the lower end of the points when he's really roughing the car around and making the most of his talents and what he's able to do. But it's just another really poor start for McLaren for a team that has so much heritage, so much history, so much winning, and to come out like this again, you're wondering what are they doing? They've got the factory, they've got everything, all the showy off stuff. They've got it all. They've got an incredible talent in Lando Norris, and genuinely, if they don't pick it up pretty soon, I would not be surprised if Lando, his manager, whoever else is around him, go and genuinely actively look for a new race seat. And that's obviously talking about buying him out the contract as well. But right now, Lando's talents are being wasted.
Yeah, big time. It was. I didn't think that it could get any worse than last year for McLaren in terms of how they performed. But yeah, it was absolutely abysmal. Like really, really poor. Lando pitted 6 times, and Piastri obviously pitted once to retire when he came in and had the startup of the wheel.
I
It's
found that
just
quite funny as well, the start up of the wheel, and then he had like a loading screen. It gave me
yeah,
like
it was
turning
like
on
a
your PC kind
screensaver.
of vibes, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny, unless you're a McLaren fan. But yeah, absolutely shocking, and agree that Lando's there because if you, I remember there was a bit in the race where he was on the back of Hamilton and was it Sainz's battle? Yeah, because Hamilton couldn't get past Sainz, and Lando was behind them, and he was looking all right, like he was hanging on to the back of them, and it's like this is where he should be, but he was a lap down. That is where he's got the talent to be racing those guys, and it's just being completely wasted. And they better hope that it's a repeat of last year in the fact that it was just Bahrain an absolute stinker, because then obviously Norris ended up getting a podium in by Imola, and kind of started performing a lot better. But it doesn't look good for him at all. And all the people that are like, Tommy, why do you hate McLaren? It's not that I hate them, I just don't have any faith in them, and this is why.
You're frustrated, aren't you, Tommy? Because you're old enough to have seen McLaren winning all the time and having
Yeah.
that amazing part of their sort of career as a team. But this is not where they belong. And
No, and I want to see
it's
Lando at the front because he's
exactly. We want to see
deserving
Lando
of
at the
it.
front. We want to see all the McLaren fans. There are a lot of you. We want to see you happy as well. I did put a tweet out saying how you were after qualifying. I then, of course, had to ask you after the race as well, just to check in with you McLaren fans, because it's been a tough start, but it's difficult to say if this is going to be a trend for the season because, as we mentioned, last year, McLaren picked it up. Lando was on the podium by Imola. Whether that'll be the same thing again, I'm going to doubt, but you can just have a bit more hope. Let's wait for a few more races to see where they actually check in. Maybe Bahrain is just a bogey track for them. Okay, next question. Late Apex YT. Given Red Bull Racing tend to find 1 second in mid-season upgrades, how many races is Max winning this year? Why did we have to do this one? I feel like it was quite clear that Red Bull are doing really, 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 really well. I mean, look, if we are not going to put let's put reliability issues aside. Max Verstappen could easily win every single race this year. I don't think it's going to happen because that would take a gargantuan effort from not only him, but the reliability from the weather remaining consistent and everything else you can think of. But I think realistically, he can win 20 and genuinely 100% believe that with the performance of the Red Bull, and he won 16 last year. 20 is not out the question if Ferrari are out the picture.
Yeah, that's mad, but it's crazy to think. But even last year, you got to think that there were a few races where he had some problems. Silverstone, he was in the lead, and picked up a puncher, probably would have won that. Same with Brazil, he was coming back through the field. Singapore, he had those issues in qualifying. So this is what I mean. There will be those moments again during the season, which is why, joking aside of all, it's going to 23-0 the title, that won't happen, we say. But there will always be some like random things that occur. But it is scary because Verstappen is one of those drivers that just driving the best he ever has. And when the car is good, he's got a teammate, no disrespect to Sergio Perez, because he's doing the job he was there to do and picking up a brilliant P2 like he did, but is not on his level. So he's going to be there just winning. He's got an even better car than last year at the start. So goodness knows how many he could win.
Give me a number, Tommy.
I mean, I agree with you. If he had no DNFs or anything, he could genuinely win every single race. It wouldn't surprise me. But there will be problems. So I reckon he will win 15. There is part of me that thinks that maybe the other team catches up, but I can't see it. This is the thing. It all comes down to the development and their wind tunnel and all that catering stuff.
We're yet to see the impact of their reduced development.
Yeah. This is last year's car and how good it's been.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we will wait and see. Hopefully that hasn't made you want to turn off for the rest of the season with the fact that I said 20.
Please still subscribe, though.
I said 15. Subscribe to us because, you know that we'll be giving honest opinions on everything. Next question, at Ineke_D. Does the pace that Williams have shown surprise you? I figured they'd be like the 9th, maybe last team on the grid, or is it track specific? Well, Williams said right from the get-go, really, that they felt like they were going to be fighting more this year, and they've absolutely shown that at Bahrain, not only with Alex Albon's car, Tom Bellingham, but also Logie Bear. You know what I mean? Like, he had an excellent weekend, didn't score any points, but he was very close to. I think it was 8 or so seconds behind Albon, which is exactly what Williams would want from a debutant, his first ever Grand Prix. Certainly not the next Nicholas Latifi. I'll have you know. There's a few critics out there that have said it, but no longer. Whoever they are, they have been silenced,
washed.
But no, it doesn't surprise me because Williams have been hyping themselves up a little bit. Let's not forget as well, James Vowles, the team principal at Williams, and of course it's not his effect because you can't really just take over and make such a massive change. But I think that will help moving forward as well. But yeah, Alex Albon scored a point, didn't he, in P10? So
he sure did.
Great work.
Yeah, here comes the apology video. I'm sorry, Logie Sarge. I'm sorry.
Straight down the camera.
Camera for you. Yeah, it was incredible from Williams, and I am surprised. And I said it. I will happily be proven wrong, and I've happily been proven wrong because they are in the mix in that midfield. They don't look far and away the worst car like they have done for years and years and years, and that is great for Formula One because we can see them in that mix. And Albon getting a point. And yeah, Logan Sargent in P12, I would not have called that. I mean, we'll go into the predictions later, but you said biggest surprise, and we're like, 14th, and I was like, well, that would be incredible, and he was higher than that. So yeah, fair play to him. I'm sorry, Logie.
There you go. The apology has been delivered. Well done, Tommy. But hopefully, it's not just track specific. Williams very much were track specific last year. In terms of their car and it working just randomly in certain tracks on the calendar. But let's fingers crossed for Williams fans that they are more consistent with that. I actually saw Tomo tweet who put the W back in Williams, and we do like that. It was a good tweet. Well
P7 in the constructors right now. But take that.
There you go. Championship over. Just stop it there. That's some cash money right there. Next question. Oxent_United. What's the record for time penalties incurred in a single race? Asking for a bestie. I don't know. I don't know what the record is. I think it's probably set by someone like Maldonado, if I'm being completely honest
It
with you.
actually is. Yeah.
It is. Oh, there you go.
Well, most penalties in a race was Maldonado in the 2015 Hungarian Grand Prix.
And how many
got
does
3.
he have? It's a 3.
So what did Ocon get?
Esti
3.
got 3. Yeah.
Here it goes. Matched a record of Maldonado's. What a performance.
I don't know why it went so bad. He qualified 9th.
I do.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly why. We'll get on to our predictions very shortly. It just couldn't go. It was basically a meme-worthy race. The fact that one thing would happen, and then he'd get another penalty, and then he'd get a penalty again. So he got the first penalty for his incorrect grid box.
Yeah.
The second one for not serving the penalty correctly, and then the third one was for speeding in the pit lane.
Yeah.
Coming in for his penalty.
Shocker. That's basically pretty much not far off what Maldonado got in that race as well. So, yeah, Esti Besti channeling Maldonado, bringing him back. But yeah, what a shocker.
I haven't seen either how many penalty points he's got for these incidents.
Thank goodness it wasn't Gasly.
It was Gasly. He'd be putting his feet up for the next round of the season. But yeah, an absolute stinker for Esteban Ocon. You'd have to say the biggest flop, potentially. But that can be up for debate. As we now move to our next segment, which is basically very simple: biggest winner and biggest loser. That can be a driver or a team. So, biggest winner has to be Red Bull as a team for me. Very obviously, why they are miles clear of anyone else. They were chilling out in first and second. It was very clear to see that. And as much as we liked to get excited by practice and, could there be a team that's going to get in the mix? Realistically, not. Red Bull have come out the blocks far too quickly. Like, just let some of us have a bit more fun. Like, you can win the championship, but at least give my heart something to root for, with a bit of Ferrari or a bit of Aston Martin. But no, they're so far clear, and they have to be biggest winners for me.
Okay, just to be different, then I will go for Aston Martin because, I mean, incredible from Aston. Nothing more to be said about Red Bull. They were amazing, but I guess in terms of the surprise factor, they'd have absolutely, it's incredible that they finished 3rd and 6th, not just because that is so far away from what they were last year, but everything that happened with Stroll as well. The fact that he finished P6, and I was talking about what a risk it was to have him in the car because they could end up, and it was almost a massive risk when he nearly yeeted. I mean, I imagine they could have quite easily ended up biggest loser because they'd have wiped each other. Well, Stroll would have wiped out Alonso at turn 1 and ended up with no points at all. So, yeah, Aston Martin, biggest winner for me, just to be different. But it is hard to argue against Red Bull because they were mighty.
They were incredible. They really were. Now to biggest loser, driver or team? McLaren. Sorry, I don't really need to go into any more detail as to why it was an absolute stinker of a weekend and they will want to forget it immediately.
Yeah. Is there anyone else? Maybe Ocon, just for how ridiculous his race was as a driver. So team, I'd say, the fact that it was definitely McLaren for team, but driver, Ocon, and, well, I guess, sorry, but Charles, in terms of pain, because he was on for a podium, and that's 15 points down the drain. Sorry.
Okay, now let's move on to the predictions that we made back on Thursday, which you would have seen on YouTube. If not, check it out for the next Grand Prix as well. Let's find out how right or wrong we were. Our first one was biggest good surprise. I went for Sargent.
Fair play.
I think that's a point.
I think that's a very big point.
That's a solid point. That's the most whole 1 point I've ever seen.
I went for Haas, which is definitely not a point because, that was probably the first season ever where they didn't come out the blocks firing and do well. So Haas had a shocker.
They really did.
Yeah.
My predictions kind of came true. Yours not necessarily as much. So maybe you need to use that power more responsibly next time. But then again, to be fair, even your powers couldn't stop Verstappen getting pole. Biggest flop, I said Ocon.
That is
Which
mad.
is the craziest thing. Like, why? There was no reason for me to think that Esteban Ocon would have a bad weekend. But that is probably the worst weekend of his entire career.
Yeah. Literally, he became Pastor Maldonado after you said that, which is crazy.
Strangest outcome. But I will take the point. Sorry, Esty Bestie. 2 from 2. Let's go.
Yeah, I went for Piastri, which I'm getting a point for that. Shocking weekend.
Yeah, fair enough. You get the point. Well done. 2-1. Pole position, we both went for Verstappen, so that's a nice little point for both of us. Again, as much as I would have not taken the point, I would have taken a Leclerc pole position there and then him running off into the distance, but that didn't happen. So we'll take a point each there. We then have my top 3. So I went for Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc. Are we giving points for each position?
I think just as long as you get it, whatever you get right.
Or do you need to get the top 3 right for a point?
Oh, maybe we
let's do a point per position. Let's do a point per position.
I wonder why.
So I went for Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc, so I got 2 out of 3. Tom,
I went for Perez, Leclerc, Sainz, so I got none.
Oh, yeah, no, let's definitely do that. And finally, one crazy prediction. I said that Alonso would DNF from P5, which was very specific. And there was a point in the race, was there not, Tommy, where we'd seen that the biggest good surprise was happening, the biggest flop, pole position. I think the top 3 were Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc. Yep. And the only thing to come true, or yet to come true, was Alonso DNFing. And you were like, oh my God, what is going to happen? Is this going to happen? And then he was sat in P5 and I was going, oh my God, his engine's going to go, isn't it?
Yeah, it was even more insane than that because, yeah, you had the top 3 in. Ocon was definitely the biggest flop. Sargent was the biggest good surprise. And you even quoted on the Thursday video saying, oh, he'd be up in P14. And then we noticed he was in P14. And then at that moment, we noticed that Alonso was P5 and you were like, Alonso's going to DNF from P5. I genuinely thought that there's some kind of weird witchcraft going on here and you were just going to, I mean, we'd have to end the predictions there. If you got every single one right. That would be insane.
To be fair, knowing your predictions, I could have probably not done predictions for the rest of the season and I'd still have more points than you at the end of it.
Yeah, fair. Although I did get this one right, which was my one crazy prediction was Albon outqualifies a McLaren. And we almost had both Williams outqualifying both McLarens if Logie Sarge had gone 0.001 seconds quicker in qualifying. No. So do better next time, Logie. Joking. I'm really sorry.
So in total, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. And Tommy, you had none, 1, 2, 3. So 5 plays 3. Well done. We will basically keep an eye on this throughout the entire season and we'll see who is the prediction champion come Abu Dhabi. So there you go. That is it. Sorry if the energy, by the way, chat has been chat. I'm so used to being talking on Twitch. I guess you are kind of chat if you are from Twitch. But if you are just listening on the podcast or watching, the shoeies have absolutely destroyed me. So we did a shoey. If you haven't listened or watched on Twitch, we did a shoey every single 1K Twitch subs. We are now on 13,000 Twitch subs. And for some stupid reason, I was ill a few weeks ago and I thought it was food poisoning. I then did a shoey the other day and then realised after I had done my shoey for 13K that there was mould on the top of my shoe. And my God, am I feeling it right about now? So if I disappear for the next few days, I'm sorry. It is P1 with Tommy. Enjoy.
Oh, dear.
And I will try and make it to the F1 to 10 driver ratings, which is happening tomorrow. So look forward to that on all good audio platforms. We're going the video for that on the Tuesday, aren't we, on YouTube? So if you want to see our faces, please do that as well. But that is it. Tommy, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, looking forward to doing that driver ratings as well, because I can already hear people going, oh, you didn't speak about blah, blah, blah. Or say someone like Gasly, for example, who went from 20th to 9th, but we will cover every single driver tomorrow or based on where you are. But yeah, I will just, my final thoughts are just, it's been, despite the perhaps dull race, I've had a lovely day for my birthday, enjoying Formula One with all of you guys. And having my two favourite drivers sharing the podium. It's been good times.
Well, I'm glad one of us enjoyed the Grand Prix weekend. No, but on a real, it's great to have Formula One back. Hopefully we'll get a bit more closer racing at the front, but fingers crossed we'll have to wait a couple more weeks to see if that will happen. So thank you very much. If you've been watching on YouTube, we've given you the full podcast, which you've been asking for. So there you go. The full race podcast will always be on YouTube. So enjoy that. We'll see you very soon for another video. Bye.
Bye.